I welcome you all. I'm Swati from Pharma State Academy, and today we are hosting you and Mr. Prashant on the topic today's leadership principles and action questions. Since this is a 1 hour session, I will quickly go through a short bio of Prashant sir so that we all know him. Most of us do. He is a leadership and strategy consultant, executive leadership and team coach. Also faculty and speaker. He has spent more than 27 years of corporate life in pharmaceutical industry, where he began his journey in frontline sales, then moved into marketing and general management for over a decade. His last 4 years of the corporate journey has been leading multicultural, multi-locational companies as their managing directors. He is also a visiting faculty at NMIMS Mumbai, one of the India's top 10 management institutes. He has 3 internationally certified coaching credentials from Marshall Goldsmith Coaching, Global Coach Group, and also now with ICF credentials and standards. He is additionally a certified Grow More coach. So let us welcome Mr. Prashant, and right away I'll hand over this session to Mr. Prashant to take us through this session.
Thank you so much, Swati, and thank you everyone who has chosen to spend with us. I know it's been for many a hard and a long day, so you've chosen your time, and I hope to make it worth the while. What I'm going to be spending the next 35 to 40 minutes is trying to give you a glimpse of what's really got a lot more acceleration as a leadership principle. And as you run through the slides along with me, you will get an endorsement of many things that you have been doing, but probably may not be in much quantum as compared to what it is required today. And that's where the entire gamut of the leadership etiquettes, the leadership ethics, the leadership ethos starts changing. And the best part about leadership is that there's no single formula. There's no single formula because my style is very akin to me. The style with somebody else is very akin to someone. So there's no right or wrong here. It's all about experiences. It's all about the way you build up your entire environment, your entire context around the leadership game. So let me just start sharing my slide and get straight away into the conversation with you. So what I'm going to be doing today is, I'm trying to bring a little twist on the principles. The principles are there. The principles, you might see a few new terminologies that are coming up. You might see a few thoughts that are coming up. But what's going to be important is the one in yellow, is the one that's going to be the action question. And this is where I'm going to invite you, request you, provoke you to start thinking on those lines, because if you would like to get your leadership act together, then this becomes a very, very integral part of your journey going forward as leaders in your organizations, in your communities, or in let's say the countries that you represent. We are in the season in India in one of the longest and the most successful game show with a lot of people doing. And when I see this gentleman, I think he's really revamped the way we look at quiz shows in India. And something that's very popular is, of course, an audience poll. So to set the context for the session today, I'm going to request Satish to put up an audience poll question to get a little flavor of what it is. And what does that say? What is the most important trait that you wish to see in a leader? I would like you all to put in your queries. It's aggressive, it's inspiring, it's kind, it's visionary.
You mentioned KBC, Prashant sir. I
Yes.
wish there was a fastest finger first.
Well, like I said, there's never a right answer. There could be a right template, or a popular template. And if you can look here, there is a different way for people to look at things. We got a few more participants left. I guess we have a little time to go in. For those who haven't yet answered, please do that. Okay. Well, I guess can we end the poll, Satish? Thank you so much. So the results, what come up here is inspiring is around 38% and 56% is visionary. And that's an interesting take. That's a very, very interesting take on where we are. And I'm quite sure that probably today's context gives us that visionary becomes quite important and inspiring is the next. And let's look at what a very interesting research tells us about. Okay, a research from the Forbes tells us that the ability to inspire and motivate others is the number one competency that differentiates the poor from the good leaders. So why is it so important to be an inspirational leader? Because today, if you can really bring about a high employee engagement in the entire teams that you lead and you manage, you're going to start seeing a very, very contrasting impact in the organizations that you deal with, or the teams that you manage, or the teams that you really overlook. And what's the fallout of it? There's a very startling graphic that actually tells us about what's the impact of uninspiring leaders. Does it really have an impact? Yes, and the impact is twofold. I would like you to pay attention to a couple of data points here. The first is that if you have an uninspiring leader in your organization or in your team, or if you are one of them, then certainly the biggest impact is one on your direct reports. Your direct reports engagement starts dropping down, and not more than 23% of your direct reports actually exhibit a great engagement at work. And worst is that more than 47% of them actually think of quitting. And there goes the common parlance that people leave managers and not organizations isn't too very different from what the data actually throws up. So what we are talking about is, if you are not going to be an inspiring leader, you could be actually having a lot of impact on your direct reports. And is that all? No. The second part of this graphic, as I would like you to go through, is that you also damage your chances of getting promoted. Not more than 3% of uninspiring leaders actually stand a chance of getting promoted in an organization. And worse come to worse, the probability of their productivity being in the bottom 10 of the organization is as high as 93%. So there is no such impact of you by staying uninspired, or people who say, I don't really care about what people think about me or how people are. I'm like this. You might need to rethink looking at some certain hard data points that is up here in the open by a very, very well-conducted research. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to do over the next 35 minutes is that I'm going to get you to invite you to write down certain yes and no's as we move along certain leadership principles. I'm going to invite you to write down what are the actions that you would take on those questions that I've actually started putting up for each one. So as you go through every slide, pay attention to two important things. One is the title, because that gives you the theme, that gives you the template of what leadership principles are all about. And second is there's an action question, and there I would like you to write a yes or a no in whatever piece of paper or pen, or even on the mobile that you have. And let's see how that pans out as we end the session in the future. The first and foremost is a massive sense of customer obsession. How obsessed are we with our customers? And if you look at the graphic here, you are looking at stakeholders as an extension to the customer. I'm looking at stakeholders as a major font. You've got certain yellow or certain orange, as you see it on your screens, certain orange buttons. These are all your internal stakeholders that you talk about, your finance, your owners, your marketing, your support teams, your sales teams. And the blue buttons are the ones which are your external stakeholders. And this is where your customer journey starts. Your customers, your governments, your regulatories, your partners. Immense number of partners today have really rallied around organizations in the last number of months and years. Good leaders, the leadership principle that thought that we could stay away from customers, and in pharma, you've been hearing this for the recent past quite loudly, is patient centricity or customer centricity. How much do you start knowing what your customers and patients want? Leaders who are extremely diligent in the market start with customers and work backwards. We generally start a top-down approach, which means whatever we strategize, whatever we tacticize, we really literally look at taking that down the throat of the customers. Is that going to really work? Probably the answer is it has never worked as much. It was your far superior execution levels and high commitment levels down in the front line that actually got through those answers. So what you need to start doing is, how do you start looking at customers and start working backwards? Good leaders actually work vigorously to earn and keep the customer's trust. And that's a bond which actually settles down what relationship is all about. So while you might have an attention on competitors, but you should obsess more on your customers. And when you start obsessing, when the scale starts tilting more towards your customers, you will start seeing the impact there. And now comes my question. And let me come to one very wonderful incident that happened to me, why this is so very important and why this has stayed with me as a professional all these years is during my days as a group product manager in one of the leading Indian companies. One meeting in a review, my cluster had asked me, Prashant, how many customers do you actually connect? So I said, sir, I connect around a couple of customers. And what's the frequency? So most likely when I'm in the office, my customer connect is around a couple in a fortnight to 3 weeks. He says, and when you're on the field, I'm not interested in that because you're going there to meet customers. He says, I want you to start changing. How do you want to know about your customers? So I said, I talked to my boys. He said, is that enough? Why don't you start getting in touch more with your customers and with your internal stakeholders? I says, okay, so what is it that you require me to do? And he came up with this fantastic thought. He said that I wanted to connect with one customer a day. I says, okay, I will try and do that. And this he meant was doctors. I'll try and do that. And I want you to send me a report. I said, okay, done. And how would you send me that report? I said, I'll send you an Excel sheet. Once in a week, I'll send you an Excel sheet of the 7 customers I connected with. He says, no. He says, you're going to invest in a 200-page notebook. And, we all had that wonderful 200 pages notebook, which I think today has got converted into a digital infinite pages, notes that you might be using on your digital phones. So he said that get a 200 pages notebook and dedicate 1 page to a customer. And I want you to start filling up that page as you connect with that customer in the day. Now that was a big, big bummer for me. How am I going to fill up a page after talking to a customer? Is he really going to give me time? Is he going to even know me? Is he going to really even, do I have questions to ask him? And that exposed my lack of awareness of what it means to be customer centric. And what I've done over the last few decades is that I've actually extended that and gone beyond customers to the entire ecosystem of stakeholders. So my action question to each one of you here as a leader is, did I connect with a customer today to learn more? Please pay an attention to the underline, to learn more, and dedicate that 1 page to that customer that you talk in a day. And what's my definition of a customer? My definition of a customer is not direct reports alone, because that is somebody that you are always in close connect with. I'm talking of people who are external, your external clients, your external partners, maybe some regulatory bodies to understand what's really changing in the scenario outside, or a skip level, not your direct reports, but somebody down the line. What's happening in their lives? Have you spent that quality time connecting with them and knowing what matters to them? What are the ideas that can come in? How does a support team function? And boy, they could be really pleasantly surprised. There are companies who are doing a lot of these kind of avenues. You might call it a conversation over coffee, a conversation over tea, a conversation over Zoom, a set of new recruits, a set of old recruits. You can give it any name you want. The question is, did I connect with one customer or a customer today to learn more? And it's an active question. It's not an past question. And if you start getting this worked out, you are going to be on the journey to get all the other leadership principles on track. So for me, this could be probably the most sticky point that you might want to really engage in your leadership journey that can move ahead. And nothing more has changed as dramatic as this in the last 20 months. We all have suddenly realized that it's only a handful of customers that I think I know. And a huge chunk of customers, a good 70-80% of customers, I'm completely exposed to being naked, that I just do not know what they like, what they don't like. What's the second? And what happens with that? You actually start building ownership. Today's leaders are owners. Today's leaders are business owners, people owners, process owners, organization owners, community owners. It's an ownership game. They don't sacrifice the long-term for short-term results. I may have short-term tactics, but the visual is always long-term. And that's where I come to what an inspiring leader should be. A visionary leader is an inspirational leader. So a lot of you got that your leader has to be viewed as a visionary person. You're bang on. But the context would actually start coming in from here. And it's not enough for you to just say that this is a part of my job, this is a part of my jurisdiction. It doesn't work. You need to start going to actually look on behalf of your entire team, your entire maybe division, your entire function, or even your entire organization. Start thinking, start getting ownership on that account. And that's where you'll start seeing the entire change. And that's what I would like you to really start paying attention to. So your question would be, on a daily basis, that you spend time working on strategies, getting your executions done, getting your operations done effectively. Did I do anything that supported my long term? If any question talks to you of a short-term impact, rethink. Rethink, is that a principle that you would like to stay with or sustainable ahead in future? Great leaders have relentlessly high standards. They extremely believe and insist on higher standards at work. Today, look at the way standards have really started getting redefined. Over the last number of months, people have actually upped the scale. You might think that it is unreasonably high, but no, they have constantly raised the bar purely to ensure that their teams are delivering not only quality products, despite the constraints in the market, despite the kind of let's say layovers or supply chain issues. They've constantly looked at delivering high quality products, on-time services, and processes not compromised. My question to you would be, in this account of principle, did I drop guard and let pass anything? Because if I have dropped my guard and let pass something, you are certainly in for certain harakiri happening down the line. And this is where problems start emerging out. Because when you start compromising on standards, when you start compromising on ethics, as a leadership principle, you would start finding that things will not turn the way that they're going to start turning. We all are constantly living in a complex world. The VUCA is well understood by every one of us. What do leaders want today? Leaders expect innovation and inventions across the board. I may not know how to innovate, but I want innovation down the line. And if I want innovation down the line, it's my job to see how can I simplify things. What's the light bulb moment that comes to me? When can I start looking at things that are simplified? And for that, look at ideas everywhere. We constantly are in this self-created culture that this is not done like this here. This is not invented here. So start looking beyond the box. Start looking outside, because that's where you will start getting ideas. That's where you will start feeding your teams on what ideation is all about. Otherwise, it's great to expect sitting on the other end that the team should get the ideations done when we ourselves probably haven't yet tried to hunt on what it is. So your action question here is going to be, did I invent or simplify something today? My job as a leader is not to solve problems. My job as a leader is to constantly identify problems. I have to identify newer problems. The solving can be done by my teams because they are competent enough. If they are not, please start getting the competence up. Learn and be curious. And nothing more. In this 20 months, the world has got into a learning mode. We have seen this immensely, and including pharma. The first 3 months, I guess the entire L&D teams of every organization was on an overdrive. And when unfortunately that the lockdown got extended, the biggest pressure came on them because they didn't know what more to train people on. And the fatigue to learn started getting onto people. As a leader, you are never done with learning. You have to constantly learn. And only a leader who's curious about new possibilities and wants to explore them is really going to invest in that aspect in their teams and in their business models. So as a leader, your job is to constantly keep learning and ask that question. How many of us in this group here, we are 200 plus people, how many of you here are already invested in learning something at the moment, as we speak, as you listen? If you're not, you jolly well need to start doing that. Because if you don't, I don't think you'll ever appreciate this aspect of leadership principle, which is to develop as a priority. We all have suddenly realized that one, my customers are not very many. I don't reach out to my customers as much. And the second is I'm not as capable. I always knew that, but I always kept blinkers on it. Leaders raise the bar of performance with every hire and promotion. And how do you do that? You got to develop people and hire the right kind of people. You got to recruit exceptional talent today. Today, it's a variety, it's a diversity that you really want. And what your job is on how you mentor and coach your teams. How do you provide developmental capabilities for your teams as a platform? And what are you doing in that aspect? So one take would be here, do I have an active list of to be coached or mentored employees? Every leader sitting here in this group or in people who are going to listen to this later, please have a list there, not in your mind, but in your paper. And what's the kind of plan that you do? What's the kind of schedule that you keep for developing your teams across in the future is what is going to be the most critical. And I want you to pay attention to the graphic first and then the title, because the graphic says all. You could not have a bigger star than this in the country who could be bold enough and think big enough. I mean, you got some wonderful, wonderful things that the Indian film industry would have seen for the first time ever. And thinking small is not a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders have to create and communicate a very bold outlook. You got to be bold. You got to be courageous. Today, it's your courage, it's your boldness that is going to inspire results. Today, people who have taken that hard, tough stance in these last unsure moments have always looked at how do you turn the corner? How do I move around the corner and serve my customer? Have I had the courage? My accent question. Have I had the courage to look beyond? Always. It's not a courageous look by convenience. It's a courageous look by compulsion. You've got to have that in your DNA. You've got to start thinking big and being bold in the way you start seeing and operating your business models. Your teams, learn and teach them to be courageous as well. And you'll start seeing an entire difference in the way people look at something that can be a little painful, but it is meant to hit us at the back. Have a backbone. Do not be a yes master. Today's leadership principle does not endorse you to be this. Have a look at the young guys. Have a look at the youth. Have a look at the aggression of the youth. They are fearless. They have a backbone. What I would like you all to look at, a very strong moving template in leadership is disagree and commit. Leaders are obligated to respectfully challenge decisions and even disagree. It may be uncomfortable or exhausting, but you should not compromise for the sake of social cohesion. You are not here to please all. And that famous meme that goes across everywhere, that if you want to be a leader, then you have to stop trying to please everyone. You could be an ice cream seller, but I don't think even that ice cream seller is holding any value today, because you might want a flavor that the guy doesn't have. So once a decision is there, you need to then commit to it wholly. So have a backbone of steel. Do not bend your back based on what are the whims and fancies around. It's a very tough call, but it's a call that is going to take you miles ahead. It's a call that is going to come in the formative years for you. And ask that question. My action question here is, did I respectfully disagree to improve a decision? It's not to conflict. People love conflict. Conflicts bring newer things in the world. Healthy conflicts are promoted. Healthy conflicts are to be promoted. Negative conflicts are not to be provoked. So what you got to provoke and what you got to really promote is extremely this kind of a difference in the conflict. So have a backbone, healthily disagree, respectfully disagree, and work towards improving a decision for the team. That's what today's leadership is actually beginning to start changing. We need to be brave. We need to be courageous. We need to have a backbone. That's of steel. Because here, you need to have a bias for action. The VUCA world again throws up here. Speed matters in today's world. You can't be waiting for entire data to be on your table, on your laptop, on your palm tops. Gone are the days. You got to start taking decisions with 60, 70, 80% accuracy or 80% information in hand. And if you've done that, what we call value the calculated risk-taking ability. Because if you got to ask this question, do I only take decisions with all data on hand? You are in line for procrastinating decisions. You're in line for getting all actions of yours as urgent and important and thereby crisis management. So if you want to stay away from crisis management, have a bias for action. Have a bias for action so that you jump into the act with some information that is good enough for you to learn from and not fall down deep dive. Great leaders operate at different levels. So while you understand and you are a problem finder, you also need to be sure that no task is beneath them. No task is beneath you as a good leader. You have to be ready to operate at all levels. Because I have passed a level and moved up the rank doesn't mean I'm disconnected from that old level. And today's leadership that has really driven the way transformations have happened in organizations and in the world over, they have operated at all levels. They do not hesitate. They are completely unconvinced when the metrics and story differ. I see a different data and I see a different story. How do I really understand and rectify that? It's time for me to get inside. How often do I dive into the trenches is your action question. And if you do that often, this is not micromanagement, mind you. This is done to not only find the problem, but also to give the path that people might when they get stuck. So get your hands colorful or get your hands dirty, as this little child tells us to do. Frugality. All of us have learned to live more with less. Businesses have achieved more with less. Constraints breed resourcefulness. Innovations come when there are constraints. Innovations come when there is a deprivation of various things in life. And that's what it is all about. You have no extra points to actually increase headcounts and increase budget sizes. No. What you might want to consider is a very, very smart thing. How often do I look at a zero-based budgeting exercise? So for all who may not be aware of this term of zero-based budgeting, it is nothing but start your budgeting exercise every year from zero. You must have spent 10 rupees for the year, but the next year, do not grow from 10 to 15, start from 0. You might land up at 12 and do much better. And that's what is frugality all about. Accomplish more with less. All of us have done our households like that. All of us have managed our businesses for the last 1.5 like that. Continue to do that. Do not get back into a lavish spending. Get into a far more focused spending. That is what great leadership is all about today. Be digitally literate. And I would not be shying away from telling you more that leaders are mandated to understand technology, not to adopt. Understand technology and then see what is to be adopted. We have gone into a freewheel. We have gone into a freewheeling of just adopting technology without knowing what it is. Every leader has recommended, endorsed, and promoted technology adoption. But at the end of the day, when things don't pan out the way you want, you then start asking for ROI, because you don't understand what this is all about. So what's your action question in terms of technology? What efforts have I taken to understand the digital channel that I'm adopting? Have I really understood it well? Have I really put my heart and soul into it well? And I think you will start seeing the way life starts changing across. And this is where leaders have to be extremely conscious on the way they try and drive what technology is and what technology needs to matter. Do not be into a rat race that somebody else is into technology, I want to get into technology. Understand, be digitally literate. Often you are more digitally literate than your customer. And when that mismatch happens, your ROI starts dipping down. So if you are far more advanced in digital literacy, your customer is not, get into the education of the customer, understand the customer. And that's where, go back to the first slide. What's customer obsession all about? Know what your customer wants. How many times have we test marketed certain things? How many times have we done a campaign and gone back to the customer and asked him 10 questions? Because we are otherwise, what we call beautifully, we are actually spamming people. And today, one big buzzword that has come in the last number of months is spamming. We are flooded with emails. We are flooded with messages. Why? Earlier, good old days, when you had this entire series of customer care centers calling you and sending you SMSs, you had the D&D concept. And please don't be surprised, a lot of the mailboxes will start having the D&D concept. They already put you into the spam folder, and they will just start blocking you. So please be understanding what is the technology that you want to adopt in the world today. What's the kind of leverage that you want to bring inside the market today? And here is where you will start making the change. And this is what I would love you to make sure that you are spending time in this entire basket. Quit to win. I'm in love with this concept of quit to win. And it's a complete paradox, right? You quit and yet you win. And yes, for those who are from the film loving fraternity, I guess we had this famous dialogue in Bazigar years back and decades back. But what's here that's very important? Prioritization is the key to a leader's responsibility. What is important is not only knowing what to do, what is also important is, what should I quit doing? What should I stop doing? We often get married to our concepts. We often get married to our ideologies. And today it's that ideology that you need to question. It's that entire concept that you beautifully conceived that you need to ask hard questions. Doing everything at once doesn't work. What are the small, attainable, thoughtful steps in your business that you can take? And when I see in the last number of months, you can look around the pharma, the non-pharma, there have been so many businesses that have shut down. There have been so many stores that have shut down. There have been so many offices that have been shut down. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And in pharma, I think it's the responsibility of the head office. It pains to see when divisions are wrapped up. It pains to see when brands are discontinued. It pains to see when people are retrenched. And that's because the head office has not done its job in the first place right in the beginning. You've not done the right feasibility check to see what will happen if I go with 2 months of no business. Will I be able to sustain my team? I will need to prioritize that rightly. So I need to know when to quit. I need to know that quitting is also a form of winning. And that's a very, very important leadership trait that you must start developing here. Nothing wrong in admitting that I went completely berserk. But this is the time that the next time don't do this mistake. When things start opening up, when things starts getting normal, do not get into that bandwagon of again rapiding. Continue to be frugal. Continue to be frugal, continue to be sensitive about what it means to reach out to customers and to really get across your points to them. So your action question here is going to be, what did I quit today to help me stay focused? Distraction is the world's biggest, let's say, failure and the biggest hookup here. We tend to get distracted into things that are not our core focus. And look at how companies are really resurrecting themselves. In the name of restructuring and refocusing, they are beginning to trim. They're beginning to trim the flab around them. And this is what we also need to do. We also need to do that, prioritize what is it as a leader that you got to do. This thing has got heightened to its biggest level. Along with customer obsession, you have begun to start prioritizing what is working for the organization, what is working for my team, and what is not. Whether it's a process, whether it's people, do not delay people. And there's one that I keep saying in a lot of my workshops: negative people are the biggest luxury that you can afford. You cannot afford a negative person on them. Either you rehabilitate him or you retrench him. Do not make do with a negative person in your system or in your ecosystem. Contextualize that. It's not going to be a win-win situation for you. So what's going to be important is learn to quit to win. And here is that trait that we spoke some time back: be bold, be courageous, because this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. It's unpleasant, it's unpopular, but it's right. It's right. And as they say in the leadership jargon, it's always nice to be right. It's not nice to be lenient, but it's nice to be right to your teams and to the companies that you lead and you manage. Collaboration. We have got an amazing concept of collaboration that has just got extremely popular over the last number of months. We all knew in-licensing, we all knew partnerships, but not to the extent that we're talking today. I mean, I was looking at a few weeks back and look at the collaboration that's happened for a trial, for a clinical trial done by, the drug trials are done by some companies, the placebo is done by some companies, and the license is of another company. I mean, would you have ever imagined these kind of, let's say, collaborations happening before? That's what is happening today. And leaders are always scouting for collaborations. Today's leader is scouting on where I can collaborate. Where am I weak? Do I know where am I weak? What can I do? Because I cannot build capabilities every time. I cannot upskill every time. I need to seek support. I need to go to a subject matter expert. I need to go to a company that's expert at this. So I need to be aware of my limitations and proactively build my networks to strengthen my resolve. That's a mindset. Collaboration is a mindset. It's not an activity. And if it's a mindset engrained in you, build that muscle. Build these leadership muscles in you, and you will need to ask this question constantly: what opportunity did I encash to collaborate with my stakeholder? Either old or new. A lot of your stakeholders today are doing business with you: a doctor, a chemist, a stockist, like a vendor, a partner, a business, your internal team members. How can I collaborate even better? How can an acute business collaborate with a chronic business? How can a metro business collaborate with a rural market? You have collaborations within the organization that can be tapped. How much am I really building this mindset of mine? And if you build this mindset selflessly, if you build this mindset with a long-term vision, you are in for amazing, amazing balance of what all I have, I don't need to spend more. And this also has a lot of frugal mindset in it, because you're trying to make use of lesser resources but get more outputs. And this is what happens here. So reach out to people who you think can bring great strategic interventions to your business, can bring great developmental interventions to your business, can bring great business opportunities to your business. And that's what would be a great collaborative mindset. Because at the end of the day, my last leadership principle is to deliver results. There's nothing being taken away from this. This will remain an evergreen leadership, let's say, requirement, or let's say a mandate. Despite the setbacks, and I'm going to read this from back, despite the setbacks, great leaders of today rise to the occasion and never compromise. Never compromise. So we are talking of long-term impacts. We are talking of right ethics in business. We are talking of empathetic to the stakeholders. You got to know your people. You got to stay connected to your customers. Leaders focus on the key inputs for their business and deliver them with the right quality and in a timely fashion. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. Tomorrow is to build. Today is to deliver. You will build the tomorrow to deliver constantly today. And that's the kind of change that we want. And this question is probably the most powerful question. Did I do my best every single day? And this best every single day is for all the previous leadership principles. whether it is to look at customers, it is to develop yourself, it is to be bold, it is to biasness in action. You're extremely uncomfortable if action is not happening at the pace that it is required. So if you want to deliver results, your question and your answer would be, did I do my best to deliver every single day? And if you are there, you're up amongst the best leaders that the industry would have seen, that your teams would have seen, and you come back to that Forbes research that I spoke to you, you are on course, or you are already an inspirational leader that your teams would love to work for you. Your team's level of engagement is high because you created that psychological safety net in your organization. You created that entire trust bond between you and your employees, where people are ready to give a discretionary effort at all points of time. And finally, as we have traversed this journey, lit up with 15 different occasions that has built our leadership journey, I want you to just take a few moments. Take a few moments before my next poll from the Quizmaster Satish comes up. In how many leadership principles can we strive to achieve our action question? And as I tell you back, there are two things that you have to keep in mind. The title of the question, the title and the action question, because they both are really in juxtapose with each other. How many leadership principles can we strive to achieve in our action question? And with this, I would want Satish to come up with the next poll on the screen. How many leadership principles do you feel can be adopted from tomorrow? And we've looked at 15 of them. You've got an option of none, more than 3, more than 5, more than 7. This is brilliant. It's a very honest feedback, and I think it's a very practical feedback that's coming up here.
Cool.
It's a very practical feedback that's coming up here. More than 3, we've got 40% of them. I guess with a little more entries that will touch 50. More than 5, you have, there are 5 people who are none. So that's very interesting. I think you are already way beyond inspiration there. And I think I must really connect with you guys to learn a lot more leadership skills, because it's important. It's important. And it's quite possible, right? There could be more leadership principles that you have adopted and you have been successful. So I completely respect that, that opinion here. Great. So we can end the poll, I think, with close to 75% people participated. You've got more than 40% of them talking about, or you've got close to everybody talking about at least 3 or more can be actually done. And I guess this is a very honest feedback that has come from each one of you. At the end of the day, I'm going to part with one key slide, and that's going to be, leadership is a human thing. It's about dealing with people. It's about dealing with emotions. It's about dealing with sentiments. And hence, it has to be treaded very cautiously. What worked today may not work tomorrow, may work the second time, may work with another person. So you got to constantly evolve and create your own leadership journey, your own leadership trait, your own leadership principle. What we've discussed are things that have just got accelerated, attenuated over the last number of months. And I thought sharing with you, because these are some that I do practice. I wish I could practice all the 15, but yes, I would also be honest enough that 5 or 7 of them is a daily routine for me. And I have way to go to really start, becoming good at all the others there. Thank you so much for your patient time and hearing, and, over to Swati for an open session.
Thank you so much, Prashant sir, for this wonderful leadership journey. Let us open the platform for questions. I have one question. Dear sir, most of the pharma industry is very aggressive towards digital implementation for field work. How to capitalize our ability here?
Well, I wouldn't have been surprised if that was not the first question. And being a digital platform, you have very strategically put that the first. So kudos to you for spotting that amongst the entire thing. Welcome, Vivek sir. Good to see you here as well. Well, I guess, look at that digitally literate part of it. We have to go digital. There's no two thoughts about it. The question is, what do I need to do? Today's digital has merely remained with very mundane stuff, absolutely spammable stuff. You're talking of WhatsApp, a deluge of WhatsApp messages. You're talking of emails. You're talking of certain webinars that have been hosting. As we speak, probably there will be nothing less than 100, 200 webinars that are actually there across the country that's been held for various specialties. What I would really, argue and make people go is meet your customers. Meet your customers today. They have also traveled 16 to 18 months of the digital journey along with you. You've got the right time to find out and bucket your doctors or your customers into what's the kind of digital communication channel that they would love to endorse and approach. It's a different stroke for a different folk. And I would also tell you to get that done with internal people. We sometimes have taken internal people for a great advantage that it's my team, I will do the way I want to do. That's wrong. You will need to even extend that olive branch to your internal people and ask them, what's your training methodology? What is it that you like to do? Because not everyone is as comfortable. You still have people, despite 17, 18 months, people struggle on social media platform, people struggle on online platforms. People are extremely, so that's where I said the digital literacy part is something that you really got to understand. Start mapping your customers into what's their digital literacy quotient, number one. Second, start mapping your customers into what's their preferred channel of communication. And if they don't like a particular communication, please get that incorporated and let your head office know that these are my 1,000 customers who would love to connect on WhatsApp. These are another 2,000 on webinars. These are another 3,000. Today, I'm not sure how many of us have that answer. And if you have that answer, you will actually start giving people what they want. I mean, look at each one of us. We are completely flooded with emails and messages right through the day. How many times do you open? I mean, I have gone on to unsubscribe many free emails that come to me. And despite that, it's like, those hunting lines that you have for a telecaller. If you block one line, another line opens up. You block one subscribe, there's another email ID that comes up with almost a similar content, and it's back onto your face. And that's not what you want. What happens at the end of the day? I can bet here, all of us sitting in this group here would have nothing less than 1,100 emails. Nothing less than 1,000, and that will be an understatement. And that exactly from that, almost 90% of them could be spam mails. Do you want to add on to the spam mail? I don't think you need to do that. So please ask your customers, reach out to your customers. Your customers and you are a lot more aware today what works and what doesn't work. Feel free, be courageous and ask them. And if they tell you they don't want this, then ask them how they would like to be connected with. People have begun to meet customers. The markets are opening up for in-person meetings. While that's going to be there, hybrid concept is going to stay here for a long time. I do not know for permanent. I think I am no fortune teller to tell you that this is going to be the way it's going to be. Like, I have a lot of bold, people who really tell that this is the way forward. Hats off to them. I mean, we've seen multiple GDP growth rates by multiple people in different weeks of the year, right from the World Bank to the Indian government. So it's anybody's guess, and I think we will waste each other's time and energy if you're going to keep on a guesstimate basis. So let's be real. Let's go to the market and ask people.
Thank you. That was a very wonderfully answered question, because yes, if you do not want to see spam WhatsApp messages, mails, or chats in your inboxes, why do you want to spam your customers with those?
Absolutely.
Right, Prashant sir? Absolutely. Thank you. Let me take this question from Mr. Prabhakar. According to you, Prashant sir, what is the top 3 priority for leader out of your own list? Out of 15, what are the top 3?
Oh, that's a nice one. The best part is, there are certain things that remain constant always. I guess for me as a leader, it's most important to be authentic. You got to believe in what you do. So I would, if I'm not convinced on something, it doesn't come naturally to me. So be a natural, be authentic in the way you conduct yourself, whether it's with stakeholders or team members or companies or customers or anybody around you. Stay authentic is number one. Stay disciplined. There is nothing that can change the discipline that you can bring onto yourself. Because if you're not disciplined, greatest of strategies will fall down, greatest of people will not look up at you, and you will not be able to walk the talk. So be authentic, stay disciplined, and be curious. For me, these 3 would top the list. Thank you.
What is your opinion on servant leadership, as asked by Mr. Sudeep Bhaumik?
Servant leadership is nice. Wishful thinking, difficult to practice. If you don't believe in serving others, you may not necessarily have title. And if you would have noticed, all of you, in this entire series of my presentation, you wouldn't have heard one jargon. I am not the guy to give you what is emotional intelligence and emotional resilience all about, beautifully said, good to say. But at the end of the day, after attending a program, if somebody asks me, sir, what do you mean by emotional intelligence? Then I think I've done disservice to their entire presentation. So for me, servant leadership is all about how selfless you are, in the cause of your company, your objective, your team. And if you believe that you are a selfless person where company and objectives and people come first, you will be a great servant leader. Otherwise, don't attempt, be what you are. Don't attempt that. I mean, it's no great shake to attempt something that you can't consistently live up to. And that's where the discipline comes up.
Okay. There's a question from Mr. Tinu John. Leaders are considered to be a multitasking personality, multitaskers. Is that multitasking helping leaders to be more productive or lesser productive?
Oh, nice one. I mean, I actually like this. And you know, a few weeks back, I was listening to a podcast and I got a lot of clarity. I got a lot of clarity in my own self. Multitasking does not mean doing multiple jobs half. I cannot be operating on 3 screens at a time. And we seem to be in that dilemma or in that disillusion that multitasking means doing multiple things at a time. It's not. It's just compartmentalizing your work. And if I'm doing something, you cannot do 2 things at a time. If I'm talking to somebody on the phone, I will talk to the person on the phone. But if you're going to talk and drive, you either break a signal, you are caught by somebody, and then you got to pay a fine. I mean, the best is, I don't want to say that you've knocked off somebody, but yes, this happens quite often. So multitasking is good, is necessary, but what it means is compartmentalizing your day into multiple tasks and start to work on that. It does not mean the video is on, my WhatsApp is on, I'm also chatting with somebody, and I see people doing that. And when you do that, you're not in the moment. And that's when the productivity starts falling down. So when you try to do multiple tasks within a task, that's when your productivity starts declining. Otherwise, with multitasking, your productivity does not decline. It's your speed that you got to manage. It's your consistency that you got to deliver.
Right. Another interesting question here, and rather a scenario which needs some deliberation. Mr. Anivan has asked, 2 superior bosses are at different hierarchies are trying to move organization in 2 different directions. How to hold the team and validate the right path?
Well, Anirban, I mean, I do not know if you're the same person who I see on the screen, but a nice one, and it's a very prevailing one, right? I mean, you've got 2 leaders with different ideologies. Well, if the routes are different, but the ideology is the same, you can follow either. The one that you believe and you believe that you can really fall back and support more, follow that. But if the one that does not fall in niche, well, the most commonest thing to do today is to go by who's the bigger boss and to really align to what that is, because at the end of the day, the buck stops by him and he's the one who directs you. Or I would rather tell you, if you've got it, go back to slide where you've got to develop that steel spine and go up and openly tell, I need some clarification. While both of you are right in your own way, as one of the executors or one of the key stakeholders, I need to have clarity. What do we focus on? Because this is my problem, and I assume that this would be the problem of many others. So the best way would be to confront and bring a respectable discussion on the table. After that, you got to be ready to take what it takes, because it all depends on who really wins the battle there. So that tends to get a little political, but you at the end of the day walk off being more clear on what you need to do. So have a steel spine, have a backbone, open up, get into a productive conversation, and then respectfully understand where I need to start moving. You might do a favor to all the others as well.
Right. It may be painful for a short time, but it is the right path.
Absolutely.
Nice, sir. Okay. Another quite an interesting question. When we talk about customer connect, we also understand that customers say something and do something else. This happens. They say something and they are doing exactly the opposite. Sometimes they also don't know what they want. It is only when a certain idea is presented to them, they can comment on it or use it and share their experience. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I will start to get introspective first. Do I know what I want? Do I say things and do it always? And if you look back, you may not be too different. You may be very, very similar in the way you expose yourself. lot of times I expect my team to know everything. I don't know it. My team needs all the development. I am already reached a state of euphoria, nirvana, that I don't need to be developed in the world. So when I speak to certain leaders, I get that, yeah, my team needs these developments. My team needs this development. And I think that exposes that how much you are invested in development. So what's important is that you got to really understand that the customer is the final guy who can decide what he wants to do. He can change his mind. You have no control on it. But can you start asking more questions to get more clarity? The art is in asking more series of powerful questions to improve your clarity, and then rephrase the whole thing back again to him. Rephrase and back to him and ask him that this is what I've understood. Is this what is right? Is this what you expect of me to do? In that bargain, in that process, you land into a situation where the customer either starts reflecting what is spoken, or the customer starts getting a better clarity on what he wants also. And you might, a good number of times, win the battle of confusion, and thereby hopefully get more awareness and more commitment from the customer to do what he wants to do.
Right, Prashant sir, there are questions. So please once again clear that as a leader, what we should show, sympathy or empathy?
Empathy always. Empathy always. If you show empathy, I guess sympathy is a part of it. It's a byproduct. It's a byproduct. I mean, people sometimes want you to only understand the problem. If you understand the problem, that itself is a very sympathetic action towards them. You know, sympathy has a very, very detrimental meaning to it. It shows that I am inferior. I am underprivileged, and hence I have got a sympathetic wave towards me. Nobody loves to be in that state. There are some set of people, but I don't think we're talking of leaders like that. Leaders have to be empathetic. They have to be in the shoes of your colleagues, your employees, your stakeholders, and then you start seeing the kind of transfer of great engagement that can come to you.
From Mr. Sanjay, sir, we need your views on, that is a dilemma that he has put in. How should we respond to criticism from the chief when the chips are down? How do we respond to criticism? That is a good question.
Great leaders are great listeners. Great leaders are great listeners. And if you're listening, you will be empathetic. I don't think your chips need anything more than that. Your chips start to rally around the minute you've given them a hearing. Involve them. Adopt an inclusive style of leadership. Involve them in the way you make your decisions. Be transparent to them. Let them know where we stand today. And those chips who are down will rally around and give you a power that you would have probably not felt before ever if you wouldn't have adopted something like that. So just keep it simple, straight, and start getting them to be a lot more included into your entire exercise.
And I think this could be the last question for today from Mr. Ahmed. How can leadership skill be developed regarding the hurrying towards complete automation and digital transformation with less human team members?
Well, it's a technology-driven question, and let me tell you that what is going to be automated? What is going to be automated is only things that are repetitive. What's the basic concept of AI? AI is used for things that are repetitive, that are predictive, and that can minimize errors from the human side. So things that fall into that category, only those will start falling into a completely automation world. Because even to manage those robots, you have a couple of humans sitting in a plant or sitting in a warehouse. Because today, if you look at certain modern warehouses, including pharmaceutical warehouses or any other warehouses, there are robots that actually go and pick up the stocks and get it back to you in the forefront. How do they do that? Because they are programmed. It's a repetitive task. Anything that requires emotions, anything that requires a lot more sentiments to be around it, does not or will not be automated. They will continue to be in the realms of the human interface. And we got to really accept and walk the path along with whatever technology will start helping you, because that's how it actually starts working on things that are below.
Basically, we need to upskill. And we read, I think Satish was very, very active related to an article that appeared, Prashant sir. People were very worried about automations, digitalization, jobs going from their hands. But actually, it's the other way around. A lot of jobs being created, but only thing is you need skills. You need different sort of skills now as automations have started, or you may say AI is coming in.
Absolutely.
So that we will do a session on this thing also. People are apprehensive about it, but we all need to skill up. That is what Pharma State Academy also says every time, you have to skill up. One last question, because it is quite relevant for current scenario. Dictatorial leadership sometimes work. Dictatorial leadership. Do you think it's applicable in today's scenario, or is it obsolete?
Well, nothing is obsolete. Nothing is obsolete. If you think that dictatorial leadership is obsolete, I think you're fooling ourselves. There are certain moments that you need to choose when to use it. When do you want to use it? For example, if your teams are not up to the mark, if your teams are not capable enough, if your teams are very mediocre, you might need to adopt a dictatorial, rather than calling it dictatorial, let's call it directive. Let's call it a directive style of leadership, because you are telling people what is to be done. You're telling them what is the way to do it. And when you talk about dictatorial, it works once or twice. It's like, making leadership or managing people with an environment of threat around, with an environment of fear around. That doesn't hold good in the long run. You can do that to a very small subset of people. And that's where I came to one comment earlier on. Negative people are a luxury that you can't afford. You generally tend to start becoming dictatorial on people who are sluggish, who are negative. Then I think you, rather than being dictatorial, either revamp them, rehabilitate them, or just get rid of them. Do not waste energies in trying to bring this thing into the act. It's just going to be wasteful. It's going to be time consuming. It's going to be mentally stressing.
Thank you. Thank you, Prashant sir. Thank you for joining us today. Closing comments, Prashant sir, from you.
Closing comments is there is a lot that we can do. I think just stay open to the changes that are happening. Believe that you do not know it all. Believe that you can certainly change. You can look at people around you and start absorbing that there is a lot that we can actually bring to our teams that we manage, to the companies that we run, and to the environment and the communities around us. So just be open to change. Just be open to accepting that I know not everything in the world. So stay curious.
Thank you so much. We all stay connected.